Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Taylor Comblouzier, a mining analyst at Red Cloud Securities. Today's webinar features Graycliff Exploration Limited, which is a junior gold explorer focused on its Shakespeare Gold Project near Sudbury. Today, I have with me on the webinar Jamie McIntosh, who's the president and CEO at Graycliff. Today's webinar will be comprised of two parts. In the first part, Jamie will provide an update on Graycliff and what you have to look forward to this year. In the second part, we'll take your questions live, so please send them in using the chat function and we'll get to as many as we can. Before jumping into the presentation, I'll just run through the disclosures. So for Graycliff, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this call. I would direct listeners to the cautionary note on page 2 of the Graycliff corporate presentation located on the company's website. For Red Cloud Securities Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. And we note that this call does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see our most recent research located on our website for Graycliff-specific disclosures. So now I'll turn it over to Jamie to update you on Graycliff and what you have to look forward to.
Great. Thank you very much, Taylor. So Graycliff is a pretty straightforward story. We created the company in August of 2019. We launched it in August of 2020. We've done just over a year and a half almost of exploration. We're listed on the CSE under the symbol GRAY and on the OTCQB under the symbol JRYCF, as well as Frankfurt under GE0. But it's a very simple story, and it's a great gold exploration story. So the investment highlights, really simple. There's really two parts to it. There's the Shakepeare Project, which is a brownfields gold project. And we have the Baldwin Project, which is a brownfields project as well, but the only exploration there to date has been for uranium. It's 1,500 hectares, and it's adjacent to the Shakespeare. On the Shakespeare, I'll tell you a lot more about that as we go, but it's a great high-grade gold story in the shadow of an historic headframe from the turn of the century. We believe that during 2022, we'll be able to find gold at Baldwin, and thereby we'll have the makings of a new Ontario gold camp in close proximity to the Trans-Canada Highway. The other thing that really, I think, sets us apart is we have an all-star technical team, one of the members of which has been credited with more than one major Ontario mining discovery in gold. We have a great, tight capital structure, and we're fully funded for all the exploration we have planned to do for 2022. And that's the Shakespeare. So what is it? We're 88 kilometers west of Sudbury. We're in an excellent part of the Canadian Shield with a greenstone belt. We're at a contact between the Archean Southern and Superior provinces. It's an area of intense deformation and a lot of metamorphism. And it's ideal for finding gold and other base metals as well. But primarily we are looking for gold. We have excellent infrastructure. As I said, we're 88 kilometers west, but 80 of it is on the Trans-Canada Highway. We have power, water, and road access to site. The property consists of Crown patented lease, as well as 40 mineral claims covering 1,025 hectares in one contiguous block. When we originally took the company public in August of 2020, we had a much smaller area, and it was 3 blocks that had some holes in it. We were able to purchase those from other investors and prospectors. So we now have 1,025 in one contiguous block. So I mentioned before that Shakespeare was in operation for about 4 years. It was completely done by hand. They sank the shaft by hand about 300 feet. And they drifted out a very small distance along the veins, basically following the quartz veins. And they mined about 3,000 ounces of gold, very high grades. We now have completed 7,000 meters of drilling in 3 phases. And we've been able to extend the mineralized zone in all directions and take it from surface. And we've also got some really nice intersections, which I'll talk about in a second. So when you look at this slide, and I'm going to quickly draw on it for a second, you can see there's this mineralized trend that goes through right here, and it sort of comes down and it goes, I've got to see if I can get my mouse to work. There we go. And it goes down like this. That's not the best example. I'll clear it now. And that is the area that we are most interested in. To date, all of the work has been in the area of recent drilling. And what we see regionally is these major northeast trending faults, including a fairly significant fault that goes right through the property and right through the middle of the property. And that's the Murray Fault. It's actually labeled as the Murray Fault. You can see it inside this zone. That fault is a 250 kilometer long regional fault. What you also have is you get series of small splays off the fault, and you can see one of those right on the Shakespeare Baldwin Township border. And cross-cutting that is another series of faults, which are shown in red. And those are really interesting structures. So we have a whole series. We have folding, faulting, and where you've got a combination of the folding and the faulting, you're seeing the higher grade mineralization showing up in those areas. To date, we found a series of quartz veins and stockworks of quartz veins, some containing sulfides. The gold is associated with the sulfides in some cases, but it is also native gold in quartz. And that's where we're seeing some of the VG that we've talked about in our press releases. The quartz veins have been recognized farther along. We've got, as you can see, the sampling we've done to the northeast. There's some pits we've dug. There's even a nice copper showing right up in the edge of the property. I'll see if I can put this on again right here. There. Let's see if I can draw that. No, it's not going to draw. Don't worry about it. That is over 3% copper in a grab sample at surface. So we believe there's a lot of potential for further mineralization along this 6 kilometer mineralized trend. And one of the things we've been trying to do is to get a better handle on the genesis of the gold so that we can then step out properly and find a bigger regional play. So when they put this thing into operation in 1903, it was because a gentleman named Miller had done some sampling and had found a very high grade gold sample at surface. And it was $5,000 per ton. At $20 an ounce, which was the going price of gold in those days, you basically had a 250 ounce per ton quartz vein. So they obviously didn't waste any time. They got out their pickaxes and shovels and they started digging. And they drove as I said, eventually they went down 300 feet and drifted out on the veins where they could. Basically, following that, there was limited historical exploration and work that was done. In 2014, a new group got involved and they attempted to drill in a different direction. And that's where we see that'll show up later. They drilled 2 holes that hit gold, and there's a very small green zone that had no width to it, but they drilled 2 holes, one above the other, and they hit gold. They then stopped. They ran out of money, and they stopped exploring it. We got involved and bought it in 2019, and the rest is work that we've done. One of the things we do plan to do in the 2022 is to try to reopen the number 3 adit, because the structure is on a fairly significant fault, which from a landscaping point of view shows up as a massive cliff. The shaft, the head of the shaft is at about 250 feet above the road. And the cliff is almost 200 feet. So the number 3 adit comes out well above the road. If we could open that up, then we'll be able to do some drilling from underground and perhaps even do some larger sampling. We also carried out airborne geophysics. It was delayed somewhat because of weather, but they've recently completed it, and we're just waiting for the analysis of that. We're also in the process right now of just starting ground IP. So we'll have airborne and ground geophysics, and those results will help us target new holes as well. When you look at what we've done with the 7,000 meters we've drilled, we've had a lot of success. We've not only increased the mineralized trend and the mineralized zone from the very thin linear green stripe to a much broader, deeper, and continuous blue zone. The width of this cross section is almost 115 meters, so it's quite significant, as you can see from the surface plan on the right side of this slide. And we've got continuous mineralization all the way down, including in and around the old workings, to the west and to the east of the old workings. Some of the highlights are here. I'm not going to read every single one, but you can see 4.6 meters of 5.5 grams at a depth of 76 meters. You've got 5 meters of almost 5.5 grams per ton at a depth of 114. We got 5.5 meters of 8.6 grams at 68 meters. And then when you get down farther, what's interesting is in hole 9 and 21 and 22, we had some very, very significant intersections at depth. 4.8 meters of 46 grams, 2.7 meters of 46 grams in the same hole. We also had, 4.2 meters of 19 grams. As well as a small intersection of 112 grams. So we're getting very good continuous mineralization all the way down through the structure. What we're hoping to do is once we put all this into our 3D model, we'll have a much better idea of where to step out so that when we can continue to follow this structure as it moves along the mineralized trend. And there's absolutely no reason there aren't further if this ends up being a smaller body, there's absolutely no reason there wouldn't be further structures similar along strike. So as I said, we've completed phase 3 drilling. It's now 7,000 meters, not 4,300. I'll have to fix that. The average hole lengths have been about 150 meters, as well as a couple where we stepped out and went underneath that were as long as 300. We're inputting all of the information we had, including the historic mine workings, field sampling, structural modeling that we did, all 3 phases of drilling, and we'll input the geophysical data as well. And we'll have a very good active 3D model that will help us better target future drilling. We're also going to continue to do some prospecting and field sampling along trend. And we're hope that by the end of this year, we'll be able to do a maiden 43-101 resource estimate on the project. At Baldwin, it's quite interesting. With 1,500 hectares, it's actually a bigger property than the Shakespeare. But you can see it actually abuts the Shakespeare property about the middle of the property. And we picked it up for a number of reasons. It's 68 mining claims, but it doubles our exposure in the area. The Murray Fault cuts right through it as well as another regional fault that is to the south, just north of the Trans-Canada Highway. And you still have these splays off the major faults, which we found to be extremely good for mineralization. But one of the main reasons we picked this project up was that the historical assessment reports, when they were exploring for uranium after the Second World War, the geology is very similar to what we're seeing in our drill core. And a lot of siricitized quartz, a lot of blue quartz. You've got what looks like sulfides as well in their descriptions, but they were looking for uranium, so they didn't do any assaying for that at all. And sadly, the drill core that they did drill, we cannot find anywhere. There doesn't seem to be any evidence of it, so they might have disposed of it themselves. We are going to do surface sampling. The airborne geophysics that we completed just the other day covered both Shakespeare and Baldwin. And as I said, we'll be looking for similarities between where we know there's mineralization at Shakespeare and where we believe there might be mineralization at Baldwin. So I'm really excited to get a drill on Baldwin later on this year, probably in the summer. It's a little farther off the road than Shakespeare, but it won't be an issue for us to get in there. We believe that we will find gold at Baldwin, and together with Shakespeare, we think this could be the beginning of a new Ontario gold camp. When somebody asked us, well, what do you have? Are there any projects right near you right now, or any other plays right near you? There's an awful lot of activity in this Sudbury area. We're a little bit outside of the basin. The only active player right near us is the Shakespeare nickel mine, which is to the northeast along that yellow mineralized trend. Matter of fact, the owners of that mine recently staked all the ground right up to the edge of the Shakespeare. They also have some ground along strike with Baldwin, and they're looking for nickel there. So lots of potential, lots of mineralization in this area. So the company itself is pretty straightforward. I've been involved in this business for 35 years. I'm a geologist, graduated from Queens a long, long time ago. Went into, became a mining analyst for a couple of firms, went on to do corporate finance, and I've been managing public and private companies for basically the last 25, 26 years. I was involved with Carlyle when we did the deal to Alamos as the lead director, and I'm still very active in all parts of the business and really enjoy it. We've been involved in the past with putting mines into production in Central America and South America. And so I'm really excited. I think Graycliff is an excellent opportunity. My CFO I've been dealing with for about 20 years. He was our auditor for one of our early mining companies back in the 90s. And the chairman is actively involved in mining in Australia and is an excellent resource for us. The real standout on the management and the board is our technical advisory board, or our group of technical advisors, and Bruce Durham and Don McKinnon Jr. Bruce Durham, of course, is one of the co-discoverers of 2 of the 3 Hemlo mines. For those of you that aren't up to speed on Hemlo, it's generated 26 million ounces out of those 3 mines since it was discovered a very long time ago, back in the 80s. Bruce also discovered the Redstone nickel mine in Timmins and the Bell Creek gold mine in Timmins. Bruce is actively involved in Graycliff, but he's also an excellent resource with a breadth of knowledge that is quite impressive when it comes to gold deposits and nickel deposits. Don McKinnon Jr. is the son of Don McKinnon Sr., who was the co-discoverer of the David Bell and Golden Giant mines. And he's been involved in every aspect of prospecting, mining, field sampling, property acquisition, right through to seeing projects into the development and mining stages. I believe he started working as a prospector when he was about 11. So he's been involved in every aspect for a long time. And that gives us great comfort. Don has been able to get us very good drillers, line cutters, geophysicists, ground geophysicists, as well as a number of the people that we work with are actually shareholders of Graycliff. We believe that every one of us should be aligned with you, the shareholder, so that we're providing the proper amount of value and that we have our skin in the game, as I said. The capital structure is pretty straightforward. We've already mentioned where we trade. We got 30 million shares, about 4.4 million warrants, which the final ones expire in April of 2023. About 30% of the stock is held by management and some strategic investors. We have very loyal investors, which is excellent. And I think the other thing that's important here is, a lot of people ask, well, are you properly funded? Do you have enough money? Yes, we are well funded. We have the money we need to go into the next stage. And we believe that we have the potential with this company of making 2022 a spectacular year. So I guess with that, I will turn it back if there are any questions, Taylor.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Jamie. That was a great presentation. So now we'll turn to the Q&A portion of the webinar, and just a reminder to everybody on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. So we've had a couple questions coming in. First up, I guess, speaking of the of drilling this year at Shakespeare, when do you expect phase 4 to start, and have you announced the meterage on that phase yet?
No, we haven't. And phase 4 will be somewhat dependent. It will start soon. We just announced, I think today, that we finished phase 3. Mm-hmm. The biggest issue is assaying. It's very much delayed all across Canada, really around the world. It can be as much as 2 months or 3 months sometimes to get assays, especially as we're doing whole rock analysis. So we're looking at for the base metals as well as the indicator minerals, which will give us a better idea of the alteration zones and the alteration that's occurring. And you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself. You want to make sure you have some assays so that you're not shooting blind holes and wasting shareholders' money. So it will be a little bit slower to get going in 2022, but I believe we'll probably do close to another 5,000 meters in phase 4, but it's speculation at the moment. It'll depend on how it goes. We also want to make sure that we have the geophysical analysis done so that we're targeting those holes appropriately.
Right, and for the 21 holes that are still out for assay, have those been delivered a while ago, or should those be kind of filtering in?
I think we'll have a pretty good stream of information over the next sort of 2 months as those holes come in. And at the same time, we'll be getting in that analysis that we have been looking for on the geophysics, both ground and airborne.
Okay. And for that...
We will have a period, Taylor, though, where we can't go on the property because during breakup, the mud is about 1.5 feet thick. So we have to... When it does finally break up, then we have to wait until it dries up again to go back in.
Right. Okay. And in the release that you put out this morning, alluding to that phase 4 program, it's expected to focus both on the Miller Shaft zone as well as some exploratory holes in the other areas of the property. Will those be focusing on gold targets, or is there any?
Yes. Yeah, we'll absolutely be focusing on gold. One of the interesting things, in all of our assay reports, we don't talk about the base metals, but we have some fairly significant copper, lead, zinc numbers. We also have the odd cobalt number and a little bit of silver. And really, we haven't announced it because to us, it's not what's key. We're looking for gold. But it would mean that, when we go into production, and we will go into production at some point, it will give us huge base metal credits, which means the cost of refining the gold is a lot lower. So there is fairly significant base metal in some of these.
Okay, so is that relatively continuous, or
there does seem to be, as I said, the gold shows up in both with the sulfides and without the sulfides, and the ones where it's just in a quartz vein on its own, you don't get much sulfide, so you don't get much of the base metals. But in the pieces where it's mixed in with the base metals, absolutely, we're getting some really quite nice numbers, like as high as 1% copper in some of the assays. So pretty impressive stuff. Okay,
perfect. Another question we have here, I'll read it out. It's a little long, bear with me here. You indicated in the past they were looking for uranium. This suggests that there may be some uranium in the area. Norway recently passed their Greenland legislation. I don't know if that's Denmark. Legislation restricting mining if significant uranium is found. Are you concerned about similar legislation in Canada? unless you're specifically mining for uranium.
Okay, no, I understand the question. No, not at all. There's actually a bit of a, I believe we're going to have a uranium boom this year. So I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. I think the demand for uranium is quite high right now, and the issues in Kazakhstan have made it even more prominent. Red Cloud actually has one of the best uranium teams in Canada, and I certainly have chatted with them a little bit on another issue, because I'm always interested in what's going on and what's up, and I think uranium's fine. They did not find any on Baldwin, which is why they abandoned the project. So once again, it's not really an issue for us.
Great. Okay. Jumping back to just, I guess you mentioned Baldwin. With this year, you outlined the preliminary surface sampling, airborne geophysics that was recently completed, looking to get to drilling later this year. Is there any other additional kind of exploration work that you need to do?
Yes, we'll definitely be doing field sampling. We'll probably get a drone in and find out where the outcrops in, and then just send the boys out and sample the outcrops that are visible easily, and start to get a better picture of how the geology matches Shakespeare and what's different, and where the right, it'll help us target the right spot, especially once we have the geophysics. We'll then be able to go, okay, well, this is a geophysical target. Let's get some outcrop sampling done and see what we find before we go in and drill.
Okay. And, speaking of kind of the district potential that you alluded to, are you looking at all to pick up additional ground around your current property packages?
We're always... geologists are eternal optimists, so we're always looking for that other piece of ground that might just be a little bit better, or might be different, or add something to the piece. When you looked at our original map, there's a little tiny square that has a shaft on it, adjacent to the Shakespeare property, right in the middle of it, really. And he claims it's a huge copper deposit, which is why he won't sell it to us. But I think at some point he'll eventually come around, and it would be nice to make that whole block continuous. So we're always looking. You never stop looking for good properties.
Okay, perfect. So I guess we don't have too many questions left here. So maybe just putting it all together, I guess, maybe outline kind of what this year looks like.
So we have an excellent project in Shakespeare that's going to have a lot of news in 2022. We're increasing the zone of mineralization dramatically, and we hope to continue to do that during 2022. At Baldwin, we have a much greener site. It has not had a lot of work done on it, so the world, it's ours to find, and we hope to find a lot of gold at Baldwin as well. We have a great team that we work with that are doing excellent work, and we have a tight structure, and we're fully funded, so it's a really good story. I personally believe we're fundamentally undervalued, but I'm a big shareholder, and so are all the rest of the people around the table. We wouldn't be doing this. We're not doing this for salary. We're doing it to find the next big discovery. So we think Graycliff is a great buy.
Perfect. So with that, I think we'll leave it there. So thank you very much, Jamie, for presenting Graycliff to us today and hosting the webinar with Red Cloud Securities. And thank you to everybody on the line for tuning in this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Taylor.